At my daughter's wedding, I realized I was the only one walking in alone. Crystal chandeliers glowed over rows of guests. A string quartet played something soft, while waiters in black vests glided by with trays of champagne. People arrived in pairs, laughing, straightening each other's ties, checking lipstick in their phone screens. I stood beneath the arch of white roses, clutching my silver clutch so hard my fingers hurt. "You're doing fine, Margaret," I whispered. "It's Lily's day. Don't cry, don't trip, don't embarrass her." A young hostess with a sleek bun and a headset appeared at my elbow. "Good evening, ma'am. Name?" "Margaret Hayes, mother of the bride." I tried to make it sound casual. Her smile flickered, then brightened. "Of course, Miss Hayes, right this way." We moved through the ballroom, past tables wrapped in white linen and clouds of flowers. At the center, the head table shone under a wash of golden light. I recognized the groom's parents near it. His mother's dress practically whispered money. I waited for the hostess to stop near the front. Instead, we kept going. Past the families, past the bridesmaids already taking selfies, past the band, past the ice sculpture shaped like a swan that looked both elegant and deeply unnecessary. I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I think there's a mistake. I'm the bride's mother." "Oh yes, ma'am," she chirped. "You're at table 14. Table 14 sat in the shadow of a swinging door marked service. Every few seconds, the door puffed open with cooler air, and the clatter of dishes, then thumped shut again. A stainless steel station stood a few feet away, lined with plates where waiters were stacking salads. The hostess pulled out a chair for me like this was the most natural choice in the world. "You'll have a great view of everything from here," she said. "Of the kitchen?" I muttered before I could stop myself. She gave a quick, professional laugh and vanished. I sat down, smoothing my dress over my knees. It wasn't new, but it was the nicest thing I owned. Navy blue with a soft shimmer if the light hit it right. Lily had begged me to buy something brighter, but this dress made me feel safe, like I could fade into the decor if necessary. A busboy rushed past with a tray of water glasses and nearly clipped my shoulder. "Sorry, ma'am," he gasped. "It's okay," I said. "At least I won't go thirsty." He chuckled and hurried on. The DJ's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our bride and groom will be entering shortly." I turned toward the ballroom entrance, my chest tightening. Through the crowd, I caught sight of my daughter. Lily looked like something out of a bridal magazine. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon. On her wrist, a slender bracelet sparkled under the lights. I recognized the little blue box it had come from. Tiffany, a gift from her future in-laws. Our eyes met across the room. For a heartbeat, she smiled, that bright, automatic smile she used for cameras and coworkers. Then her gaze slid past me, landed on the empty chair at my side, just as a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit stepped into it. He smelled faintly of clean cologne and starched cotton. The chair scraped softly as he pulled it out and sat down, unhurried, like he belonged anywhere he chose to be. A simple silver watch gleamed at his wrist. "Sorry I'm late," he murmured, his voice low and warm. Lily's smile vanished, her mouth parted. The bouquet in her hands dipped a fraction of an inch. My daughter went completely silent, like someone had hit mute on her life, while her eyes locked on the man now sitting beside me. And I, her mother, felt my stomach drop, because I knew exactly why. My daughter's face was still frozen in shock, bouquet trembling slightly in her hands, but I didn't dare look at her again. Not yet. Not while the man beside me settled into his chair like he had every right to be here. Richard. If someone had told me 10 years ago that this man, this calm, polished, maddeningly confident man, would one day sit next to me at my daughter's wedding, I would have laughed. Or cried. Probably both. But 10 years ago, my life looked nothing like this ballroom. Back then, I was wearing non-slip shoes and an apron. Not navy chiffon. I worked double shifts at a restaurant near Central Park, one of those places with dim lighting and menus printed on thick cardstock, where tourists ordered steak at midnight and business like water. The kind of restaurant where you smile even when your feet feel like concrete, and your manager tells you, "Honey, put some makeup on. Tips are better when you look alive." And I did smile. For Lily. She was 14 then, all elbows and attitude, sprinting between school clubs and teenage arguments about mascara. She was a good kid, a smart kid. But growing up around wealthy classmates had done something to her voice. Something sharp. Something that sometimes cut me without her realizing. One afternoon, after a long shift, I went to pick her up from a debate practice. She slid into the passenger seat, pushing aside the stack of coupons and receipts I kept meaning to throw away. "Mom," she said, wrinkling her nose, "can you not pick me up in your work clothes? People saw." My heart sank. "Sweetheart, I didn't have time to change. We were slammed today. It makes things weird," she muttered, staring out the window. We didn't talk the rest of the ride home. That night, as she showered, I sat at the kitchen table, gluing the sole of her sneaker back together. The apartment lights flickered when the heater kicked on, and the smell of fried food clung to my uniform. I scrubbed my hands twice, but it never really faded. I remember whispering, "One day, baby. One day I'll give you more." And then, as if the universe heard my desperate promise, my marriage collapsed. Her father left the same year Lily entered high school. He said he'd fallen out of love, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was a woman named Olivia, the ex he'd always kept just close enough to return to when life with me became too plain. I learned he'd been seeing her again at work events, networking dinners. She wore Cartier lipstick and carried a Mont Blanc pen, and she said things like, "In our circles." I never had a circle. The night he moved out, I found Lily crying in her room. "Dad said we'll still see him," she hiccuped. "Yes," I said, brushing her hair back. "Of course." But she didn't ask me if I was okay. She didn't ask who would pay rent or buy groceries or replace the tire that kept losing air. She was a child, and children assume their mothers are indestructible. Maybe that was why she slowly drifted toward her father's world. A world full of nicer clothes, dinners at places with white tablecloths, and women who looked like they belonged. Maybe that was why, when she saw Richard beside me tonight, she froze. Because she didn't know the whole story. She didn't know how I pulled myself from those years of humiliation and survival. She didn't know how this man became part of that story. And God help me. I wasn't sure if tonight was the night she'd learn. If there's one thing no one warns you about, it's how loud a home becomes after a divorce, and how suddenly silent it is once your child starts growing up. For a while, Lily and I survived on routines. I worked, she studied, I cooked pasta, she pretended she liked it. We argued about homework, then makeup, then curfew. Normal things, comforting things. But when she turned 18 and got into NYU, she practically sprinted out of our apartment the moment orientation week began. I helped her move into the dorm, carrying boxes up 4 flights of stairs while she kept telling me, "Mom, please, people are watching." Watching what? A mother sweating? When I hugged her goodbye, she gave a quick, polite squeeze, the kind you'd give a coworker you kind of liked. I drove home alone, listening to the sound of her key no longer on my ring. And when I unlocked the door to our apartment, the silence felt bigger than the whole city. That was when the loneliness started whispering. The kind that visits at 2 a.m. when you're scrolling through your old photos on a cracked iPhone. The kind that sits beside you on the couch while you pretend the TV is interesting. The kind that makes you wonder if the woman in the mirror is still desirable to anyone. Or if she's become invisible. To fight that feeling, I tried self-improvement, as the internet called it. I bought a Kindle because they were on sale. I read meditations because someone online said it helped them rebuild their identity. I ordered a few books from Amazon, mostly self-help, but the delivery guy started greeting me by name, which was a sign I probably needed to get out more. So my coworkers dragged me into the world of online dating. "You need to live a little," Maya said. Maya, the bright-eyed server who treated me like a second mother. She took my phone, pulled up a dating app, and declared, "We're doing this." That night, she staged a mini photo shoot in the restaurant hallway. The pictures were awful. In one of them, I blinked. In another, I looked like I was solving a murder. We posted the least disastrous one anyway. My first date was with a retired dentist who spent the entire dinner talking about root canals. My second was with a man who brought coupons to a wine bar. And the third asked me my age 3 separate times, like he couldn't believe the number. But at least I got some laughs out of it, mostly at myself. Still, the nights felt long. I missed being touched. Not even sexually, just touched. A hand on my back, a shoulder brushing mine, someone asking if I'd eaten, someone caring. For years I pushed those needs aside. Mothers are good at pretending hunger isn't there. Then Richard walked into the restaurant. It was late, a corporate dinner that had gone on too long. Men in suits, half-finished cocktails, the kind of table that tips well but never looks you in the eye. But Richard did. He was listening to a junior associate, nodding gently, correcting him without humiliating him. It was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was that he noticed me. Not the apron, not the tiredness. Me. "Long night?" he asked when I came by to refill his water. "Always," I said. He smiled, kindly, not flirtatiously. It was the kind of smile that made the air around me feel a little warmer. Then when the guests were leaving and I was cleaning up, he left a card on the table. On the back, written in a neat, steady hand, "If you ever feel like talking to someone who listens, call me." That card sat in my wallet for weeks because I was afraid to hope, afraid someone might want me again, afraid I might want them too much. But loneliness is a patient teacher. Eventually, I dialed. The first time I called Richard, I hung up before he even said hello. The second time, I managed 2 words. "It's me," before panic shot up my spine, and I slammed the phone down like a teenager caught doing something scandalous. I sat on my couch afterward, heart pounding, Kindle sliding off my lap, whispering, "Get a grip, Margaret. You're 60, not 16. The third time, he answered on the first ring. "Margaret," he said, like he'd been waiting all day to say my name. "I'm glad you called." I froze. "How did you know it was me?" "You have what I call a hesitant dial tone," he teased gently. "Sounds like someone who's brave, but not convinced she is." I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I laughed, a real warm laugh I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. He asked if I wanted to grab a coffee, somewhere quiet, and 2 nights later, I found myself standing outside a small wine bar tucked between a florist and a bookstore, the Manhattan skyline gleaming behind me like a movie backdrop. Inside, candles flickered on every table. A soft jazz record played. It smelled like warm bread and cherry wine. I felt hopelessly underdressed in my worn black cardigan, but Richard stood when he saw me, eyes soft. "You look lovely," he said. "You're very kind to lie," I replied. He leaned closer. "I don't lie to impress. It's exhausting." That made me laugh again. We talked for hours, about work, about Lily, about the loneliness that crept into our lives when no one else was looking. He told me his wife had passed away after a long illness. He'd spent years caring for her, then years afterward feeling guilty for wanting anything again. "I thought I was too old for connection," he said quietly. "Too old for wanting." That word, wanting, settled into my chest like a stone dropped into deep water. At one point, the bartender set 2 glasses of Cabernet down and said, "The usual for you two?" I sputtered. "Oh, we're not, he's not, we're just," Richard chuckled. "We're something," he told the bartender. "We'll figure out the rest." My face burned. His didn't. He was too at ease, too self-assured, like a man who'd already made peace with wanting again. For the first time in years, I let myself notice the way he looked at me. Not with pity, not with politeness, with curiosity, with interest, with warmth. When he reached across the table, brushing a stray hair from my cheek, my breath caught. A simple touch, skin meeting skin, and suddenly I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the woman men looked past at the grocery store. I wasn't the tired waitress with sore feet. I was a woman someone desired. Later, as we walked toward the subway entrance, he slipped his jacket around my shoulders because the wind had picked up. The inside smelled like cedar and something faintly citrus. I felt protected. Held. Before we parted ways, he hesitated, eyes searching mine. "May I?" he asked. I didn't know what he was asking. Permission to try? Permission to hope? Permission to see me the way I had once begged someone to see me? So I nodded. He didn't kiss me. Not yet. Instead, he pressed his forehead against mine for a single long moment, a gesture so intimate, so gentle, it felt more powerful than any kiss could have been. "Call me when you want," he whispered. "Not when you think you should." That night, for the first time in a decade, I went home with the startling realization that my body, my aging, imperfect, lived-in body, still remembered how to tingle. If falling in love at 60 felt like a miracle, then what happened next felt like an earthquake. Quiet at first, then shifting the entire foundation under my feet. Richard didn't rush me. That was what I loved most about him. Some men my age wanted shortcuts, attention without intimacy, companionship without vulnerability. Richard wasn't like that. He took his time learning me, and he included me in parts of his life slowly, gently, as if afraid that too much light all at once might blind me. I still worked at the restaurant while he managed his hotels and event properties across Manhattan. Sometimes, on his way to a meeting, he'd stop by during my lunch break and bring me a Starbucks latte because he knew it was my guilty pleasure. Sometimes I pretended I didn't like it so he wouldn't spend money on me. He never believed me. "Let me spoil you a little," he would say. "You've earned more ease than you allow yourself." Ease wasn't something I understood yet. But Richard was patient. One evening, he brought me to a building on the Upper West Side, beautiful, newly renovated, with a private event space overlooking the river. "I'm looking for a partner," he'd simply. "Someone with heart, someone who knows people, someone I trust." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Then he handed me documents. Real ones, with numbers large enough to make my knees feel wobbly. "I want you to be part of this," he said. "We can build something together." "But I'm a waitress," I whispered. "You're a leader," he corrected. "And you've been managing chaos your entire life. That's more valuable than any MBA." I didn't say yes right away, but over the months that followed, after he trained me, after he introduced me to staff, after I saw how much he believed in me, I signed those papers. And just like that, I became a part owner of a luxury event venue in Manhattan. Not because I chased wealth, not because I wanted status, but because someone finally looked at my worth without subtracting anything from it. But as my life grew brighter, the distance with Lily grew darker. When she graduated from NYU and started working in marketing, she entered a world full of polished people with polished words. A world where her coworkers wore heels that never scuffed, carried tote bags that cost half a month's rent, and talked about trips to Montauk like it was a casual weekend errand. She visited me less and less. And when she did visit, she always had advice. "Mom, you don't have to wear those shoes everywhere. Mom, maybe try something more modern with your hair. Mom, don't tell people you were a waitress. It's just people judge. People. She cared so much about people that she forgot I was, well, a person too. Yet I stayed quiet. I didn't tell her about Richard. I didn't tell her about the venue. I didn't tell her that my life had changed in ways she couldn't imagine. She was busy building her own world. I didn't want to intrude. Then one winter afternoon, she came to my apartment with a ring on her finger, simple, elegant, probably bought on Fifth Avenue. "Mom," she said breathlessly, "I'm getting married." I hugged her so tightly she squeaked, but then came the sentence that sliced through me like paper cuts, small but sharp. "Mom, I want everything to be perfect. So please, just don't do anything that makes people stare." People stare. The same words Olivia once used on me, the same words I feared had shaped Lily's entire worldview. She didn't know the truth yet. She didn't know what I'd built. She didn't know who I'd become. And the cruelest part, I didn't know whether telling her would bring us closer or tear us apart. Wedding preparations should have been joyful. They should have been chaotic, funny, sentimental, anything but what they became. Instead, planning Lily's wedding felt like walking into rooms where people smiled with their mouths but tightened judgment behind their eyes. Her fiancé's family was polite enough, but polite the way a hotel receptionist is polite. Warm on the surface, cold beneath. His mother, Judith, dressed like she'd stepped straight out of a Fifth Avenue boutique. Pearls, silk scarves, and a perfume trail that could stun a small bird. She was too gracious, too controlled, too careful with her words. Then there was her. Olivia. I hadn't seen her in years. I didn't expect to see her now. Not at my daughter's engagement dinner, not sitting comfortably among the groom's relatives, laughing as if she belonged there more than I did. She turned as I approached, her wine glass poised perfectly between her fingers. "Margaret," she said, giving me a once-over. "You look rested." I smiled. "And you look the same." A server carrying hors d'oeuvres walked by, forcing me to step aside. Olivia didn't budge. Of course she didn't. Lily hurried over, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, Olivia knows Judith. Small world, right?" Small world. Those were the same two words Olivia once used to imply I didn't fit into hers. I wanted to focus on Lily's happiness, but bit by bit, the discomfort crept in, especially when it came to the seating chart. Judith insisted on taking over. "We just want your mother to feel comfortable," she said sweetly to Lily. "We'll put her somewhere she won't feel overwhelmed by all this." All this. Translation: the wealth, the elegance, the spotlight. Lily nodded too quickly. "Yeah, Mom prefers quiet corners." I opened my mouth to correct her, closed it, thought better of it. Later that evening, I found them, Judith and Olivia, hunched over the seating board like generals mapping out a battlefield. Judith tapped the diagram. "The head family seats are here. Parents of the bride go here." Then extended family. Olivia cut in, her voice smooth as polished glass. "And Margaret? She should sit somewhere she can relax." She traced a manicured nail along the edge of the floor plan. "Perhaps near the service area? Fewer people, less pressure. Less visibility," she meant. "Less dignity." Judith nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, and the lighting is softer there, so she won't feel self-conscious." I almost laughed. "Lighting? Really?" Before I could step forward, a waiter carrying a tray of mini crab cakes tripped slightly, causing a tiny splut against the tablecloth. Olivia's eyes widened in horror. "Ugh, do they even train staff here?" she muttered. I bit back a smile. Karma had good timing, but Lily heard none of this. She breezed in moments later, full of excitement, squeezing Olivia's hand as if she were some trusted aunt. "I'm so glad you're helping with the seating. It means a lot." Olivia smiled like a queen accepting tribute. Meanwhile, Judith pulled Lily aside, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, "Your mother will be happier away from cameras. Less stress on her." "Right," Lily whispered back. "Mom just doesn't fit this kind of event." Those words hit harder than they should have. Because they weren't cruel. They weren't intentional. They were simply true to her. Or rather, true to the version of me she thought she knew. A version I had outgrown long ago. A version she never took the time to see. That night when I returned to my apartment, I sat on the sofa staring at the city lights outside my window. My MacBook Air hummed softly beside me. I could have shown Lily the contracts, the official papers, the pictures of Richard and me at ribbon cuttings and planning meetings. I could have told her the truth. Right then. Right there. But she was days away from her wedding, and I was her mother. So I whispered to myself, let it be her moment. I didn't know then that the seating plan, those tiny printed names and numbers, would become the spark that lit the entire disaster. On the morning of Lily's wedding, Manhattan looked impossibly soft, like someone had draped a sheer veil over the skyline. The streets shimmered after a light drizzle, taxis hissed past puddles, and the plaza's awnings fluttered gently in the breeze. It should have been a perfect day. I arrived early, wearing the navy dress Lily said was fine for someone your age. I carried a small clutch, my hands trembling only slightly. Richard had offered to escort me, but I insisted he come later. I didn't want Lily feeling overshadowed. Today wasn't about me. Inside the grand ballroom, staff buzzed around with the smooth choreography of people trained to make luxury look effortless. Every chandelier glittered, every rose petal was placed with intention. A string quartet tuned their instruments near the dais. I walked toward the guest tables, unsure of where I belonged. "Miss Hayes," a cheery voice called. A young hostess with a headset bounced toward me. She checked her tablet, then beamed. "Right this way, table 14. 14. Not 1, not 2, 14. I followed her, praying silently that I was wrong about where that table was. But then I saw it. A round table tucked against the wall near a set of swinging stainless steel service doors positioned perfectly between a tray return station and the tunnel-like corridor that led to the kitchen. Every few seconds, the doors flapped open with a whoosh of cold air and clatter of dishes. A waiter nearly backed into a chair while adjusting a tray of salads. The hostess placed a menu in front of me as if she were handing me an invitation to paradise. "Enjoy the view." "Yes," I murmured. "Magnificent view of bowls." A waiter passing by snorted before catching himself. "Sorry, ma'am. You're actually in a prime spot. Food comes out first here." I smiled. "Well, at least I'll be fed before everyone else." He winked. "VIP perks, right?" His attempt at humor was sweet, and honestly, it helped a tiny bit. But when I looked at the head table, bathed in soft golden light, surrounded by towering floral arrangements, it stung. That was where the parents usually sat. That was where I should have been. Instead, I sat with the equipment. Guests began pouring in. Aunts in chiffon, uncles in tailored suits, friends in sleek cocktail dresses, people waving at one another across tables. No one waved at me. The ceremony music started, soft and elegant. I stood with the crowd as Lily entered. She was radiant, glowing in her fitted white gown, veil trailing like a cloud. When her eyes swept across the ballroom, searching, I lifted my hand slightly. Her gaze passed right over me, then froze. Right behind me, a man approached the table. The man I had secretly loved for years, the man Lily had never met because I'd never wanted my private life to eclipse hers. Richard. He wore a charcoal suit, freshly pressed, with a pocket square that matched his tie. He looked impossibly at ease, even next to the chaos of waiters bustling behind us. He pulled out the chair beside me, the one Judith and Olivia had deliberately placed at my side but never expected him to fill. "Sorry I'm late," he said softly. His voice, warm, familiar, brushed against me like a reassurance I didn't know I needed. The quartet's music softened, the crowd's whispers faded. Lily's expression changed instantly. Her bouquet dipped, her smile fractured. She stared at Richard, then at me, then back at him. Her lips parted, not in joy but in confusion, in disbelief, in shock. I knew that look. It was the look of a daughter watching her mother cross a line she never knew existed, a line between the world Lily lived in and the world she thought I'd never belonged to. The moment the ceremony paused for photos, Lily didn't even wait for applause to fade. She handed off her bouquet to a bridesmaid and walked straight toward me, fast, purposeful, the way she used to march through the apartment when she was furious about curfew. "Mom," she whispered sharply, "come with me, now." She didn't look at Richard. She didn't greet him. She didn't offer even the polite smile she used on strangers. She simply grabbed my wrist, gentle but insistent, and guided me through a side hallway draped with linen curtains, then into a narrow back corridor where servers were lining up with trays of champagne. A waiter carrying flutes nearly collided with us. "Careful." Sorry," he stammered, making a panicked U-turn like he'd walked into the wrong movie scene. Lily waited until he disappeared behind a door before turning to me, wedding veil trembling like static around her shoulders. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice wasn't cruel, just scared. Scared in a way she masked with frustration. "What do you mean?" I said softly. "That man. Who is he? Why is he sitting with you? Why didn't you tell me? And why?" She gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. "Why is he acting like he belongs here?" "Because he does," I wanted to say. "Because I do." But she wouldn't have believed me, not yet. Instead, I replied, "He's someone important to me." Her face tightened. "Mom, this is my wedding, not whatever midlife dating experiment you're doing." The words hit harder than I expected. "I'm not experimenting," I whispered. She pushed forward, voice rising like an embarrassed teenager afraid her friends might overhear. "Do you realize what people will think? You sitting in the back by the kitchen with some older guy?" "Lily," I interrupted gently, "he's my partner." That single sentence stopped her. "Partner?" she echoed, stunned. "Since when? You never told me. You never introduced me. Mom, what if he's taking advantage of you?" Her breathing quickened. Older men prey on lonely women all the time. They love the attention. Stop. It came out firmer than I intended. For a moment, she actually did stop. I took a breath, trying to steady the tremble in my voice. "Richard isn't using me. You don't know that. He helped me," I swallowed. "A lot." I wasn't ready to reveal how much. Not here. Not now. Not in a hallway that smelled like steak sauce and lemon polish, with servers brushing past us carrying trays of mini quiches. Lily pressed a hand to her forehead, messing up her perfect curls. "Mom, I don't want you to get hurt or embarrassed. Not today. Not on my wedding day." Embarrassed. The word stung more than any insult Olivia ever threw at me. "And why?" I asked quietly. "Would I embarrass you?" She blinked fast, like I'd cornered her with a question she couldn't answer honestly. Then she said it, the thing she'd been holding in her chest for years, like a shard of glass she didn't know how to remove. "Because you don't fit here," she whispered. Not shouted, not angry, just honest. Honest in the way a child is honest when they don't yet know the cost of their own words. I stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like miles. Behind us, the swinging kitchen door flew open. A flustered staff member burst out, pushing a cart of desserts. His eyes widened at the sight of us, and he muttered, Sorry, wrong hallway, before fleeing again like he'd walked into an emotional landmine. For a second, Lily almost laughed. Almost, but her worry swallowed it. Mom, she pleaded, please just keep some distance. For today, I'm begging you, don't make things complicated. Complicated. I nodded slowly, though the movement barely felt like mine. Okay, I whispered. But inside something shifted, something quiet and irreversible. Because for the first time in years, I felt the ache of a truth I'd been too afraid to look at. My daughter didn't know me anymore. And she didn't want to. Dinner service had just begun when the ballroom lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. A hush swept across the room, refined, expectant, the kind of quiet that made crystal glasses look like they were holding their breath. I returned to table 14 alone. Richard stood as I approached, concern darkening his eyes. Everything all right? He murmured. I forced a small smile. It's her wedding day. Emotions run wild. But he wasn't fooled. Richard always saw the things I didn't say. Before he could ask more, the MC tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before dinner, we'd like to invite someone very special to the stage, representing tonight's venue. I blinked. Wait, what? This wasn't part of the plan. Richard gently touched my elbow. Come with me. My heart jittered. Richard, no, this isn't the time. It is, he said softly, firmly. You've hidden long enough. But he didn't drag me. He simply offered his hand, open, steady, waiting. And somewhere inside me, the part of me that had spent a lifetime shrinking, stood up. So I placed my hand in his. Whispers rippled through the crowd as we walked side by side toward the stage. Servers parted for us, like they somehow sensed this wasn't a casual stroll. One of the waiters nearly dropped a tray, catching it with a gasp that sounded like he'd just witnessed the plot twist of the evening. When we stepped onto the stage, Judith's jaw stiffened. Olivia visibly paled, wineglass trembling just enough to betray her facade. The MC handed Richard a microphone, unaware that he'd just triggered the social equivalent of an earthquake. Good evening, Richard began. His voice carried effortlessly across the ballroom. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Lawson. I oversee several event properties across Manhattan, including the very venue you're sitting in tonight. A few people murmured, curious, impressed. Richard continued. But what many of you don't know is that I do not run these properties alone. He turned to me. My cheeks burned. My heart hammered against my ribs. Lily stared from her table, her expression unraveling stitch by stitch. This woman, Richard said, placing a gentle hand on my back, is my business partner, my equal. And the reason this venue runs with as much heart as it does. A gasp fluttered through the room like a startled flock of birds. Partner, my equal, not a server. Not a charity case, not an embarrassment. My daughter's bouquet slipped from her fingers and rolled softly onto the tablecloth. Richard wasn't done. And tonight, he added, I want to honor her, as a colleague and as the woman I love. The room erupted in whispers, shock, surprise, a few delighted squeals from distant tables. Someone near the bar clapped before realizing no one else had started yet. But my eyes were only on one face, Lily. Her world, the neat little story she'd written about who her mother was, began collapsing in real time. She pushed her chair back so fast it scraped the floor. Judith reached for her arm. Olivia whispered something sharply. But Lily shrugged them both off and stood frozen, staring at me on the stage like she'd never seen me before. For a moment, I thought she might faint. Then, slowly, she walked toward the front of the room. Her veil swayed behind her like a ghost of all her misconceptions. She stopped just a few feet from the stage. Her voice cracked as she said my name. Mom? Just that one word, raw, trembling, stripped of judgment, was enough to break me. The guests disappeared. The chandeliers blurred. The music faded. All I could see was my little girl again. The one who used to hold my hand crossing streets. The one who used to whisper, "Don't ever let me go." The one who forgot who I really was. Until now, Lily stood at the foot of the stage, trembling, not with anger, not with embarrassment, but with something far more vulnerable. Recognition. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Her voice echoed softly through the microphone system, the ballroom so silent that even the chandeliers seemed to hold their glittering breath. I stepped down from the stage slowly. My heels felt unsteady, but my heart, oddly, didn't. For once, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't apologizing just by standing. I stopped 2 steps away from her. Because this was your day, I said gently. Your moment, not mine. Her eyes filled instantly. But you, Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know you were all this. I thought. She broke off, guilt twisting her features. Richard stayed back, giving us space. He always knew when to step forward and when to step away. Lily clutched her hands together, ruining her manicure without noticing. I treated you like you were less. I thought you needed protecting. I thought you were lonely and fragile, and I was lonely, I admitted. And I was fragile, but not because of what I do or what I wear, because I didn't think I deserved more. A single tear slid down her cheek. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I reached forward and cupped her face, something I hadn't done since she was 16 and heartbreakingly dramatic about missing a school dance. She leaned into the touch without hesitation, like muscle memory returning after years of being misplaced. Behind her, the groom approached slowly, nervously. Mrs. Hayes, we had no idea, if I'd known. You didn't need to know, I said kindly. Just love my daughter. He nodded, swallowing hard as if struck by the weight of what he'd witnessed. A chorus of sniffles rose from guests. Even Judith dabbed her eyes, though she pretended she was adjusting her mascara. Olivia, however, sat rigid as a marble statue, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed, calculating every social loss she'd just suffered. Justice, sometimes, didn't need handcuffs. Sometimes it came in the form of a room full of people watching a woman's arrogance collapse quietly in her lap. The MC, sensing the emotional tide, gently signaled the quartet to play a soft instrumental. The music warmed the air between us like sunlight breaking through clouds. Lily took a shaking breath. Mom, will you sit with us? At the head table? I smiled softly. I already have a seat, but I'll sit wherever you want me. She shook her head fiercely. I want you next to me. And just like that, she pulled me toward the front, past Judith's surprise, past Olivia's shock, past every whispered assumption. As we walked, a waiter sidestepped us suddenly, nearly spilling a tray of champagne flutes. Oops, sorry, emotional traffic jam, he blurted out, cheeks burning. The whole table behind him burst into laughter, tension breaking like a snapped ribbon. Lily laughed through her tears, clutching my arm tighter. Only at my wedding. We reached the head table, she due to seat beside hers, the one meant for the bride's mother all along. When she kissed my cheek, the entire ballroom erupted into applause. Later, after the dances and toasts, after the cake cutting and hugs, I slipped out onto the terrace to breathe in the night air. Manhattan shimmered below, reflections dancing on the windows like sparks of possibility. Soft footsteps approached. Richard. He slid his arms around my waist, pulling me gently against him. You did it, he murmured. No, I said, turning to face him. We did it. He kissed me then, not hurried, not tentative. A kiss deep with gratitude, with years of longing finally allowed to surface. Inside, Lily peeked out and quickly covered her eyes with both hands. Oh my God. Okay, too much PDA. I'm going back inside. Her laughter floated behind her like a blessing. For the first time in decades, my life didn't feel like something I had to apologize for. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't small. I wasn't out of place. I was exactly where I was meant to be. As a mother, as a woman, as someone finally brave enough to be loved out loud. 1 year after Lily's wedding, Central Park looked exactly as it had on the morning I first learned how to breathe again. The air was cool, the lake shimmered like polished glass, and joggers passed by with earbuds and determination. I sat on a bench near Bow Bridge, a Starbucks latte warming my hands, my Kindle resting on my lap, open to a chapter of Women Who Run with the Wolves. I'd been rereading slowly, like a gift I didn't want to unwrap too fast. I wasn't alone. Richard sat beside me, legs stretched out, scarf tucked into his coat, reading something thick and businesslike. When a breeze lifted my hair, he reached over and gently smoothed it back. An instinct now, the kind that feels like home rather than surprise. Are we still on for dinner tonight? He asked. Only if you're cooking, I teased. He grinned. Then we're definitely ordering in. Behind us, footsteps approached. I didn't even have to turn. Mom, Lily called out. She jogged the last few steps, cheeks pink from the cold, carrying a paper bag. She handed it to me. Inside was a blueberry muffin, the exact kind I used to pack in her lunchbox. I passed the bakery and thought of you, she said. Richard nudged her. You think of her more now than she thinks of herself. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. It's called making up for lost time, okay? The three of us sat together, watching the water ripple. A quiet, easy silence stretched between us, not the old tense kind, but a new one, full of comfort and unspoken gratitude. After a moment, Lily leaned against my shoulder. "Mom," she said softly, "you know, you don't have to stay small anymore." I looked at her, my daughter, grown, humbled, wiser. "I'm not small," I said. "I just finally stopped pretending to be." Richard took my hand. Lily squeezed my arm. And in that moment, I understood something simple. Something I wish I'd learned years earlier. You're never too old to start a new chapter. You're only too afraid. And I wasn't afraid anymore.